First would be to add 1.4, which will be a very brief President's Report / Superintendent. Dr. O'Connell has sent me an update to provide to everyone. So that would be the first thing, add 1.4, President's Report. And then the second thing I'd ask is if we could move, when you go to the consent agenda, it's item number
7.2.
7.2, the Advisory Committee rosters. I'm going to ask that we table that until our next meeting when we have the superintendent as well as the assistant superintendent of the curriculum present, because there's some questions that I have and another board member with respect to these committees, and so I'll be asking that we move that off this agenda into our next agenda, which I believe is going to end up being next week.
Yes,
Okay.
11th. Yeah.
The 11th of August. So with those two changes, 7.2 being moved to the next agenda and 1.4 being added, recommended action that the Board of Education approve the agenda as presented. Thank you. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carried. Okay, so I'm going to move into the President's Report, which is a message I received today from Dr. O'Connell, and she wanted to share this considering the news that came out today from the Department of Health Commissioner, Dr. Sucker. Okay, so today Dr. O'Connell and Denise Harrington-Cohn had a conference call with Brian Healy, soon to be the village manager. Mr. Healy wanted to provide the district with an update on the Katz property and the proposed pilot. Denise, could you share the update? The opening of schools will be the next thing.
Thank you. Yes, so Dr. O'Connell and I spoke with Brian Healy this afternoon just to get an update on the Katz property. The pilot agreement is on the village agenda for August 16th. So far, a permit was issued for the two buildings, and they are now at the planning board for site review. The developers are looking to submit the application for the project to the New York State Office of Homes and Community Renewal in the coming weeks. But in order to do that, they need to approve the pilot agreement, which also requires approval from the village board and the Cortland board. Though the pilot does not require Board of Education approval, they just wanted to update us as to the status because it will impact our tax levy in the coming years. So the present line of thinking is that the project would be done in the summer of 2023, which would impact our 24-25 levy. And of course, all of this is contingent upon approvals and financing. Just to refresh everyone's memory, the pilot is for approximately 33 units, and this is on Maple Street. Of course, the agreement has not yet been finalized, but it's intended to be a 30-year agreement valued at approximately $70,000 per year with a 3% annual escalation fee. When speaking with Mr. Healy, he indicated that the percentage that the school would be eligible for or calculated based on our tax base would be approximately 55 to 60%. That amount has not been determined yet, but it will be consistent through the life of the agreement. Payments will be due annually to the village on April 15th, at which point they will issue payment to us. And any delinquent payments will be subject to the same penalty and process that failure to pay taxes would be. So that's all we have as far as now. Again, it's going to be on the agenda for the village for August 16th, which will go live to the public on August 13th.
Did,
Yeah?
Denise?
Yes.
You mentioned that the percentage of the pilot that is designated for the school district is roughly 55%?
55 to 60%, and the balance will go to the village and the town of Portland.
Right. Is that a fixed percentage, or is that recalculated each year based on the tax levies of the district and the town and the village?
Great question. It is their intent to have that be a stable figure throughout the contract. So they will decide on a date to determine our percentage and the percentage for the other taxing authorities, and then that rate will be used for all subsequent years.
Will that be written into the pilot agreement?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
That answers my question, both in terms of the percentage being fixed and the payment timing. So if those will be in the pilot agreement that is voted on by the town board and by the village board, with the village board having its responsibility to establish the pilot under law. I think that takes care of it. I'll just let the board know that I will monitor this. I will see what's on in that resolution on the 13th when it goes live, and if necessary, I will attend the village board meeting on the 16th.
Thank you.
Okay, so now, the other part. Dr. O'Connell will be meeting with the School Reentry Task Force next week to review the plans for our full in-person opening of school on September 1st. Also, she and the administration will review the plans with Dr. Meir, who's our district physician. We have been waiting to hear from the New York State Department of Health on school opening guidance. However, today Dr. O'Connell received the following message from Governor Cuomo's office, which shared a statement from the New York State Health Commissioner Howard Zucker. It said, with the end of the state disaster emergency on June 25th, 2021, school districts are reestablished as the controlling entity for schools. Schools and school districts should develop plans to open in person in the fall as safely as possible. And Dr. Zucker recommends following the guidance from the CDC and local health departments. Well, after Dr. Zucker released this statement, Betty Rosa, who's the New York State Department of Education Commissioner, sent Dr. Zucker the following letter. She shared, notwithstanding the stated position of the executive that his responsibility has ended with his rescission of the COVID-19 state of emergency, we hope and trust that the Department of Health will fulfill the promises previously made by the Governor's office that the Department of Health guidance would be forthcoming. This is in Dr. Rosa's letter, Betty Rosa's letter. In her letter to Dr. Zucker, Commissioner Rosa further stated, the discontinuance of Executive Order 202 does not affect the Department of Health's statutory responsibilities, and the circumstances enveloping the Executive Chamber this week should not otherwise deter the Department of Health from the proper execution of its responsibilities to protect the public health. Therefore, this is from Dr. O'Connell, based on this statement from the Health Commissioner, Dr. Zucker, we will continue with our planning. We do understand that this may change given the back and forth between the Governor's office and the State Education Department. And so Dr. O'Connell wanted to share that information with the full board so you are aware where we currently stand, and she will continue to provide us guidance probably next week when she's present at the meeting.
I'm sorry, Iris, just for the record, the Reentry Committee is meeting on August 11th, is that correct?
Yes.
I believe
That's
so.
correct, it's August 11th, 3 o'clock.
And will there be a hearing of the public at any point regarding that, do you know?
No,
Not likely, because
No.
it's the task force that's meeting on that day, so it's the committee meeting. So I don't think those are usually done.
There
Within a
are
year.
committee members who are myself as board representative, faculty, staff, parents. I don't think there are students, there are other community members who were providing counsel to the superintendent. This is a superintendent's committee. So it's a task force, a group that she established as superintendent to help provide her with feedback and thoughts as to how the administration will make the administrative decisions. The task force is meeting, but to my knowledge, that is just the members of the task force. It is not a public meeting as a board meeting would be. And on the 11th, or probably on the 11th, I'm sure Dr. O'Connell will report about what her plans, or the administration's plans and thoughts are, providing, utilizing, among other things, the input from the task force, which is the way we operated last summer as well.
I'm sorry, just to follow up. So just to offer a timeline to the public, if that meeting is on the 11th, when would the board be deciding on that, or when would a public announcement be made?
We probably will have to wait to see what comes out of that meeting, because I know last year the task force met maybe 3 or 4 times, made some recommendations, and then Dr. O'Connell met with the public. She'll keep us informed as she goes along, but generally, I mean, that was last year. Every year, the circumstances have changed, but that's the way it was done. The task force first meets, they dive into the various issues that will impact the decision, and then the administrative council gets together and they try to unpack what the recommendation is going to be for the district.
Okay, so to be determined, right?
Yes.
Okay,
But
thank you so much.
Short
But to answer
answer.
just to fill in more, given a lot of what the task force did, I think I can say this as a member, is kind of looked at different aspects of reopening and broke up into teams and had, if you will, focus groups and breakout groups, and took information which was then assembled by the administrators from Dr. O'Connell and Mr. Griffiths, who then thought about what it is that they, as the administrators, and their responsibility as administrators, would be recommending and to the board, or be implementing, as that is to the extent it was in their authority. But they really used the task force as a sounding board. And last year, when everything was so unknown, there were plans that were made to discuss various aspects of both in-person, hybrid, and remote learning, and how that would operate. We're probably not going to have that complexity, but it was really to provide kind of feedback and a check on what perhaps the administration was thinking, or trying to get ideas that they hadn't thought about, which is how we operate, and I presume that's how it will be operating in the meeting next week. And I don't know, since we're meeting at 3 o'clock, and I don't know if we're going to speak about it that day or some other point.
Yeah, I think it's probably unlikely, but I don't know what guidance the administration was waiting for guidance from the Department of Health, and now they're being told, well, we're not going to give you any guidance, that's at the last minute. Whereas last year we kind of knew, so we were able to plan better, or more in advance. So I think we'll have to be determined is the best response at this point.
Sure.
And I would add, I think probably to the extent the board is going to be having discussions, there are probably going to be things that come down the pipe from State Health Department, SED, County Health Department, our own school physician, and other sources. So we may be getting together later in the month of August to discuss
Yeah, I'm honestly just trying to measure community expectations and just be able to provide a timeline, because I know the questions are going to start coming as we get closer to September 1st.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you, Dr. O'Connell, for just
Yeah.
sending me that message and for you to deliberate it.
Neil, as a member of that committee,
Yeah.
is it safe to presume that the committee is comprised of people in the healthcare industry, or at least are committees consulting with people with a public health background?
There are some people who were, I think, involved in the public health. Certainly the school nurses were all involved. The issues that we talked about were not so, this is last year, thinking back to last year, was not so much on the discussion of public health issues, you know, how bad is it, do we need these barriers, that kind of thing. That's the guidance we would get from, it's kind of how to implement within that framework.
Mm-hmm.
For example, before we got the use of an app for parents to report, there was a subgroup one that I was on that talked about how are we going to do a check of the health of everybody who's coming into each school building. And we kind of came up with plans and ideas. Discussion on, on school buses. How are we going to run school buses in utilizing our parents, staff, administrators talked about how is that going to work? What are we going to do in terms of the safety of the school? So it really wasn't so much the medical half of it, because that's the guidance that the administration received from our school physician and from county health department and state health department and other sources that, that was not so much what we were about.
So it's more of here are the guidelines from the state and the federal.
Yeah, how are we going to actualize them?
And then the task force was tasked with implementing.
Right, and we also met later in the year when we could move to full 5-day a week, and the question of how are we going to do that? How are we going to integrate with students who are going to remain remote? What are we going to do in the classroom in terms of utilizing, the students who are remote being participating through Zoom in the classroom as opposed to a separate Zoom class for remote learners, and what do you think about that? How can we do it, and what kind of facilities do we have? So it wasn't really as much medical and health as it was education.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to move to 2.1, which is opening of the public hearing on the district-wide safety and emergency management plan. I'm sorry, I know this is hard to hear. Recommended action that the Board of Education opens the public hearing for the district-wide safety and emergency management plan.
So moved.
Second.
And now I turn it over, I believe, Denise, to you. No, we got it first. Oh, I'm sorry, yes. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carried? Thank you, Josh. Denise?
Good evening. So this is more of a formality. As I'm sure some of you recall, this is probably the 4th or 5th session on the district-wide safety. The district-wide safety plan. Back in April, the governor issued an executive order that required that we go back and issue an emergency management plan within the district-wide safety plan. So this plan has been reviewed by Altaris, our safety and security advisors, the district-wide safety team, our administrative council, and it was presented to the board on June 17th for review and a 30-day required open comment period, and has been on our website for review. So tonight is more of a formality, open comment for the public, and then to be approved by the board, and at that point we will send it to the Department of Education for their review and approval. And again, this is our district-wide safety plan, which is public. Our building-wide safety plans are confidential, so they will not be shared with the public.
I would just like to invite the representative here from Alteris to make any comments if he has any, since he's here.
I was just getting ready to say we have
I'm sorry.
perfect timing. He's present in case there are any questions that come in. Is there anything you'd like to say? This is Paul Schemmer from Alteris.
Yeah, so we invited Paul to come for any public comments. There was going to be no presentation this evening. We had one at our last session. Paul actually just got off of a plane, and his plane was delayed, so he just got in. But if anyone has any questions, Paul has been deeply involved in this process with us over the past year, and a great support to us.
Paul, I do have one question, which is, the legislature recently passed, the governor signed an amendment to the labor law, section 27C. Which requires certain things regarding planning in a pandemic kind of situation. I know there's certain postings that need to be made and certain changes that at least the New York State School Board Association has suggested we make to our policies on school safety plans and teams to incorporate that. Since that really came out after you had done the work to prepare the plan that was presented in the beginning of June, is there more that will need to be done to revise the district-wide plan or the building level plans to meet the requirements of that state law?
No, not really. I believe what you're referring to is what Denise had alluded to earlier, which had to be done by us by April 1st. That's actually 2801, which is public health emergencies for anyone in New York State. And we have that in your plan. There's the piece in there for your district plan, and it's referenced in all your building level plans as well. So that piece has been done, and it sort of goes along the line with you guys have an infectious disease annex in your plans as well, prior to COVID. Once COVID happened and the governor's mandate came down, it sort of was right in line with that. We were complying with that. We put in the pieces that you needed, and you have those in your plans now. So to answer your question, you shouldn't need anything else with regards to that other than what you already have in your plan.
Okay.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Paul.
Sure.
Okay.
So if there are no other questions from the public or on board at this time, I will close the public hearing. Recommended action that the Board of Education adjourn the public hearing on the district-wide safety and emergency management plan.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carried. And Denise, I should have actually also asked, did we receive any comments during the time period?
We did not.
So next is 2.4, adoption of the plan. Be it resolved, after having given the public an opportunity to be heard at a public hearing, the Board of Education hereby adopts the district-wide safety plan. And be it further resolved that the district clerk is directed to file the district-wide safety plan with the Commissioner of Education within 30 days of the adoption, as well as provide copies to the appropriate local law enforcement agencies and the state police.
Before I move it, this should be amended so that instead of reading district-wide safety plan, it reads district-wide safety and emergency plan.
So you're going to move it with those two?
So I will move it as written in the agenda with district-wide safety plan amended to district-wide safety and emergency plan. Safety and emergency management plan.
So district-wide safety and emergency management plan in both places?
Yes,
In the resolution?
because that's consistent with the actual documents.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carried. Thank you. Please go home and get some rest.
Nice seeing you.
Thank you for coming this evening. Okay, now we're going to turn to the hearing of the public. At this juncture, if there's anyone that would like to make a statement to the public, we'd ask that you, to the board, we'd ask that you come up to the podium, state your name and your district residence. And there are a couple of rules with hearing of the public, primarily one being it's 3 minutes. The board will, it's a comment period, so it's a time for us to listen. We won't answer any questions at this juncture, as well as there should be no comments about any specific person, student, staff, or district resident.
Great. Well, thank you. I'll share who am I and why I'm here. My name is Tully McGowan. My wife and I live on Sunset Drive with our 4-year-old son, who will be at CET and in the district next year for the next 12 years. So just thank you all. We are happy taxpayers and will be engaged. I'm here for 2 reasons, and I want to share that. First, in the village and at this meeting. In the village, we decided, my wife and I, to become residents of Croton, and this village in particular within Westchester, last September. We chose it because of the increasing diversity in the district, the quality of the public schools, thanks to many of you, and the willingness of the district to engage on and in difficult conversations, like around climate, for example, and education. This decision was reaffirmed shortly after we moved when a district-wide invitation for a open Zoom meeting was extended, and I participated in that and found it so welcoming that I decided to raise my hand as a straight middle-aged white guy to join the equity stakeholder group, and participated in all of those meetings, our board presentation, remotely of course, and have watched all the recent board meetings online. The experience for me was very uncomfortable at the outset, but I actually found over time it reaffirmed not only my own identity, but also gave me a greater appreciation for those members of the stakeholder committee that had different lived experiences. And I would hope that my son has the ability to develop those skills before he's 40, so that he can learn from his peers and with them, with diverse perspectives. That's led me to why I'm at this meeting. As many of you have said, this is a pivotal time in our district. And I've noticed on the agenda, I believe it's item 7, that the equity stakeholder group is listed, but we are one of the few committees that do not have any dates scheduled for later this year or next. I can imagine that's for various reasons and would ask for 3 C's to be considered. First, that you calendar those meetings. I recognize the working session is in September. Calendar the meeting. Second, and I should have said at the outset, I'm here in my individual capacity. I do not speak for other members of the equity stakeholder group. Second, we commit to appointing and funding a third-party facilitator with input from the community, and in particular the underrepresented members of our community, whether they be in the stakeholder group or not. Third, that we communicate with the district and parents and guardians at large what we're doing and why, so they are not unnecessarily alarmed and don't feel the level of discomfort that I initially did, and recognize that really what we're doing is reaffirming not only their children's own identities, but allowing them to participate as student leaders alongside the other students we serve. Thank you. Sorry if that was over 3 minutes. Really appreciate your service.
Thank you. Thank you for coming forward.
Thank you.
Okay. There being no other members of the public present at the time, we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is 4.1, Board of Education Calendar Amendment. Recommended action that the Board of Education approves the amended 2021-2022 Board of Education meeting calendar as presented.
Second.
On the question?
Yes, so do I understand correctly that the only change is the move of the date of the September work session?
Yes,
23rd to 28th?
that's correct. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carried. And now we have some sad news. Recommended action that the Board of Education accepts the administrative resignation of Karen Gatto, Director of Pupil Personnel, for the purpose of retirement, effective end of day January 20th, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
On the question?
Just say, it is sad news. Karen has been a stalwart protector of the district, but more importantly, a protector or someone very concerned about all of our children that she serves as Director of Pupil Personnel Services. And while I've spoken with her, I understand the reasons that she has decided to retire. She will be missed.
So true. It's not sad news, bad news. It's sad news because we're losing yet another one of our treasured and valued administrative staff. So on the all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carried. Recommended action that the Board of Education approves the side letter of agreement between the Croton-Harmon Union Free School District and the CSEA Clerical Bargaining Unit as presented.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. 4.4. Recommended action, be it resolved that the Board of Education accepts the revised engagement letter and audit proposal from Nugent and Hauser PC for the year which ended June 2021 as presented. Be it further resolved that the Board of Education hereby rescinds Resolution 3.1 from its meeting on April 8, 2021, which previously accepted the original engagement letter and audit proposal from Nugent and Hauser PC for the year that ended June 2021.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
On the question?
Yes, if we could. Denise will remember the audit committee, perhaps. I mean, I think I know why there's an amendment, but if you could just explain why their agreement is being revised.
Right, so initially they had just agreed, their engagement letter was for the external audit for this fiscal year, but in assessing our federal funds for the 2021 school year, it was determined that we were over the threshold and required a single audit for this year. So the engagement letter is modified to also include the single audit, which was valued at, very remarkably and thankfully, only $2,000 for that audit. So this is just amending that original contract.
Any further questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Recommended action that the Board of Education approves the 2021-2022 lease agreement between Croton-Harmon Union Free School District and Croton Academy of Arts, beginning September 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022. The tenant shall pay the landlord, who in this case is the school district, $2,500 per month in accordance with the terms and conditions outlined in the lease agreement.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. On the question?
Only one very minor question. I noticed the lease begins September 1st. Our school year for students begins August 30th?
Not for students.
Not for students.
Not for students?
No.
Okay, so that staff will come in August 30th, and students
Students are at the 6th.
Yeah.
Students are after
Later.
Labor Day?
Yes.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention?
Me.
Anna, was that you? That's me. Thank you.
Motion carried. Sorry, I lost the mic. Okay, next is the 4.6. Recommended action that the Board of Education accepts the internal risk assessment provided by R.S. Abrams Co. with the District Corrective Action Plan Incorporated for the period ending December 2020 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All in favor?
Iris, if I could just jump in. Yes, did you have a
Yes,
question
yes.
on it?
No, I was about to.
Oh,
vote in
sorry.
favor.
So I just wanted to give a shout out to the business office and the pupil personnel services. We had our risk assessment and our internal audit on stack reporting, which is for our special education students with 0 findings, and that is solely due to the hard work of both of those departments. And our risk assessment was also very positive. Both have been reviewed by our audit committee, and just wanted to just give a shout out to the team. You did a great job under very difficult circumstances this year. And that is also Karen's department, Karen Gatto's department.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
4.6? Aye.
Yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 4.7. Recommended action that the Board of Education approves the corrective action plan in response to the system to track and account the STAC internal audit performed by R.S. Abrams and Co. as presented.
So moved.
Second.
On the question?
I guess, Denise, your comments that you said a moment ago was both on 4.6 and 4.7.
Correct.
Right, okay.
Yes, the business office more on one and PPS on the other.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Now the reason for the meeting, which is the tax warrant. Recommended action that the Board of Education approve the 2021-2022 tax warrant for the Croton Harmon Union Free School District as presented.
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carried. And now for the library's tax warrant. Recommended action that the Board of Education approves the 2021-2022 tax warrant for the Croton Free Library as presented.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Recommended action that the Board of Education gratefully accepts a donation in the amount of $200 from Eric Kohler as a contribution to the Carrie E. Tompkins Elementary School General Fund.
Before we move that, I just noticed in the paper that we received, it stated that the donation was from New York Life.
Can I talk
Yeah,
on
so
that?
let's make sure we do this correctly.
So it should be both. It comes from Eric Kohler through the job matches. So we will change that and put both New York Life. and
Okay,
Eric
so the
Kohler.
motion, which I'll make, expresses grateful accepts donation of the amount of $200 from Eric Kohler and New York Life
Correct.
as a contribution to Carrie Tompkins Elementary School. I will move that.
Second.
Thank you. On the question?
I would just like to thank Eric Kohler for continually pursuing these funds that he has as an opportunity through his work. and for the effort that he puts forth through that and to pursue the opportunity that he has to benefit our district. So thank you very much.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. To echo what Anna said, we are so incredibly grateful.
You said echo Iris.
No, I said Anna said.
Okay, I got her.
Her name is short.
She's Iris, I'm Anna.
They're short names, but they're a little different. As always, we are so thankful to Mr. Kohler. I don't know how many years he's been doing this, and it's just tremendous. 6.1. Recommended action that the Board of Education approves the 2021-2022 co-curricular appointments as presented. And this one is just for genre classes.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention?
One abstention.
Motion carries. 6.2. Recommended action that the Board of Education approves the mentor appointments for the 2021-2022 school years as presented. School year.
So moved.
Second. Thank you. On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? You're opposing?
No.
Abstention? Motion carries. 6.3. Oh, this is another one. Recommended action that the Board of Education accepts the instructional personnel resignation of Jane Parkhouse, part-time string teacher, for the purpose of retirement, effective June 30th, 2021.
With great sadness, so moved.
Second.
On the question? Again, Ms. Parkhouse was a fabulous, fabulous member of staff, and she always brought the best out of our students. When it came to music, she was tireless in cheering them on and helping them display their talent. It's sad that June 30th came and went, and I didn't know she was retiring, because I didn't get to say goodbye. But with that
As
said,
she said, she's still going to be Penn. She's going to be working at the Bennett,
I know,
and so we will still see her around. And
I know.
okay.
A little different, but I know. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. And now we have to do a decision on recommended action that the Board of Education rescinds the part-time instructional personnel appointment of Jane Parkhouse as part-time strings teacher for the 2021-2022 school year.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Recommended action that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda as presented.
Yeah, and that, just to make sure everybody knows, does not include 7.2, which has been removed, tabled until next. Okay.
So moved. Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. And now we're moving quickly to our second hearing of the public. Same guidelines apply. If there's anyone that would like to address the board at this time. Okay, thank you. Now we'll move to board reports 8.2. First committee that we had listed here was board development. In short, everyone knows next week we have our second retreat in the series. It will begin currently it's scheduled to begin at 6 o'clock. However, if we do need to schedule a meeting before that to handle business actions, you'll receive something from Tracy with that information. You'll also receive an email from me probably tomorrow morning with further follow-up information about the actual retreat And I have nothing else to add at this time from board development. Next, communications.
Yes, the Communications Committee met on July 27th. We spent a lot of time talking about the communications surrounding the DEI Community Forum, which is upcoming in the fall, and how exactly to communicate about that. And it's going to be included in a series of in all the upcoming communications from the school, so that'll be shared out to the public with its dates. We also talked about the upcoming reflections and Croton Connections issues that are coming out and what the content would be. And Croton Connections is going to focus almost entirely on the work of the on our work on equity and inclusion that had been actually suggested way back in early June. We suggested we do a special edition of Connections about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that's why and it's finally coming to fruition. And it's largely informed by the work to date that was done by the equity stakeholders. And then there's going to be a mini Croton Connection that's going to come out, which is going to which is going to cover things like after-school program, and you know, basically, and as well as many other things. Oh, the allergies are back in force. So obviously, you know, we would love to be able to communicate more about back to school, but as things keep changing, it's been very hard to do that. But the Communications Committee will be back on top of that. As we learn more, we will be able to do more. And as soon as we get guidance, we'll do more about that. And then there will probably also be an August newsletter, a superintendent's update that's coming back out, which will cover the return to school matters, and things like that. And I think that's all I have from communications. Was there a question?
Yes, Josh, I was just wondering, you mentioned Reflections is going to talk about the after-school program. When does that come out, and is there going to be any communication, do you know, beforehand?
Yes. Okay, I should
I can speak to that too, Josh.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I know people are anxious to
Yes.
figure out what to do with their kids.
Yeah, we plan to send something out tomorrow.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Explain how the numbers.
It has a sidebar, Frank, that was thanking the former operators of our after-school care program, Jim Barrett, who unfortunately passed away this year. It's more of an acknowledgement of the service that he provided to the community and to the kids at CBT, and that will be included in that document. It's not meant so much to say, well, this is how it's going to work for 2021, 2022. That will be a separate communication.
Just for clarification, I believe you said the mini Croton Connection is going to handle discussing the after-school. Reflections is not going to be talking about that, right?
It's not going to have
the Croton Connection, because there's two different documents we're talking about.
Yes. Croton Connections is all about equity. It's all about the diversity, equity, inclusion program, and that's where it's focused. There's going to be, in addition to that, there will be a mini Croton Connection, which will be a little bit will be later than that, which will have that recognition and a few other things. The target was for this to come out this week, so I'm not sure. I haven't seen it yet, but I think it's coming out very soon.
And Denise, that's the document that you're talking about that's going to come out tomorrow?
Yes, the timing has
Okay.
been challenging because of for the agreement that we're going to look at tonight for Croton, that we approved tonight for Croton Academy of the Arts, and the after-school programs that so the timing was difficult. We really wanted to spotlight Jim Barrett and Children's Place for all that they've contributed to our community. But we also wanted to get this information out to the public. So I believe what we are probably going to do is have a communication go out tomorrow and then rerun the article in Reflections, because we really need to get this information out to the community. I've spoken to probably 15 parents within the last week or so, just informing them of our intention. So we really want to get it out. So it'll probably be rerun in the mini Reflections, and we will send this out in a K-12.
Okay, and if I could just clarify, will it be stating like hours and how the program will work?
No,
or anything around that?
because the district doesn't run the program, essentially we are just leasing space to Croton Academy of the Arts, as we did with Children's Space. We will not be promoting or taking applications. It is solely done through CAA and not through the district, and that's the way that it operated out of Children's Space as well. So once all of that is determined, that we will have information on our website about it.
Okay. So tomorrow, it will put the community in touch with Academy of Arts so that they could then pursue
So that they
finding
can
about
reach
the
out
program.
for enrollment and so forth.
Okay,
Yes.
wonderful. Thanks.
And Josh, if I could, I just want to clarify for anybody who wanted more information regarding the equity stakeholder team. What you're saying is that there are some planned communications regarding meetings going forward in advance of the September 28th work session?
Yes, we do not have, I mean, I don't want to speak for that, for the equity stakeholder group, since I'm not on that group this year. I don't believe that they have set dates yet for meetings. But obviously as soon as dates are set, then they will be published.
But you have plans in terms of,
we do have a plan
right.
there is one event which is already planned, which is the community forum. And Iris, do you remember the date?
I think they're trying to target Saturday, September, whatever the second Saturday is.
Talk to that.
I thought it was a Thursday afternoon from 1 to 3.
Oh yeah, that Saturday was my idea, that's right.
Yeah.
I like Saturdays.
But I just want to kind of reassure people that there are dates in the works and that there will be plenty of public comment available in advance of the September 28th work session. And am I correct in saying that you have communications planned regarding that?
There are communications planned regarding that leading up to the community forum, and that will be included in the Croton Connection, I believe.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't believe any other committee has any reports at this time.
No, the policy has one report, which is we will be meeting next Monday, August 9th. We will continue with work that we've been doing on the non-resident student policy, and then on whatever else we can get to.
Thank you. So now we come to polling of the board. Just by way of a little intro, this is the point of where if there's anything that a board member would like the officers to put into the parking lot to try to develop for a future work session to have a discussion on, this is now an opportunity for you to just share anything you want the board to maybe sit down and have a discussion on some future date when we have time.
Okay, thank you.
Omar, I think you're not. Are you on?
I'm on. Sorry, Josh, you want to go?
No, go ahead.
I wanted to add, and I think I already added to the parking lot document, a note or a session around academic preparedness. I think the note in the parking lot document. Academic preparedness. The note in the document, I think, was changed to what we learned from 2021. While that is important, I'm more concerned about 21, 22. Specifically, I think the public would be interested in learning more how the administration is going to address the colloquially known as the learning loss. It's more accurately called the learning gap, and it's just students didn't learn as much as they would have as a result of the pandemic. I think it would be helpful to have some specifics around any curriculum adjustment that's happening. My worry is if we're expecting students to come back in the fall as they normally would, some students would be left behind. So I think it would be helpful to have that discussion with the public.
So, just for clarity, when you say with the public, or do you mean with the board? These are,
Well, for the board to have,
but for a board to have this, I just
for
want
the
to
board to have a
clarify.
discussion and then reporting back to the public,
Oh.
right? Because I think it's a question on every parent's mind. I think it's worth spending the time to address that.
Okay, and I can just give you a little bit, in terms of the normal cycle that we go through. Usually we have in October or November, we receive an annual report where the district sits down and they talk with us. They have all the principals here and we look at the metrics and the numbers and data. So, in all likelihood, that type of a discussion would be incorporated into that session. But that's usually around October or November. But if there are any additional points, please send them along to us so that we can make sure. We'll open up the document before so administration knows exactly what questions board members want addressed. Thank you. That goes into the document. Anyone else? Josh?
Yes. In light of some of the recent announcements in both in New York City and with many employers, there has been renewed interest in adding mandates around vaccines, around vaccination for COVID, and or mandates for testing, and that's both largely been applied to employees and employed at universities to students attending those universities. And I think it's something that we ought to be looking at. With regard, since we have such a large population of people who are in our buildings who cannot yet be vaccinated, notably the kids 12 and under, since the vaccine has not been approved for under 12 yet. I think it's something we need to look at, and I think it's something we may want to discuss sooner rather than later. It's really an item not so much for the parking lot so much as something that should be discussed in terms of its potential implications for policy and its potential implications for return to school, and it might continue to be taken up by the return to school. I never remember the name of this committee.
The Reentry
Task Force. Thank you.
Josh, actually, I'm going to ask you, for clarification here. Your question is something that you might want the Reentry Task Force to look at and
the first
discuss with, or is it a discussion you want us to have?
Well, the first question is a question for our attorneys, which is, can we legally require our employees to be, do we now have the power, given what we've just heard from the governor this week, can we legally require employees of the district to be vaccinated or tested on a regular basis?
There's case law that supports the idea.
There is case law that supports that. There are several issues which would require probably legal counsel.
Right, and that's
on such things as.
Well, guys, I don't want to go into the discussion.
I don't want to go into the whole discussion. I'm just.
Josh, it sounds like
I have.
If you could. It sounds like your questions are really things you may want the Reentry Task Force to look at.
Yes.
And legal questions to go to counsel.
I would suggest, Josh, if you put those questions together, send them to the superintendent and the assistant superintendent.
Well, I will send them to the officers.
Or the officers, and then they can be shared. And, those are things that may already be on the people who are going to be attending, maybe asking those questions anyway. I would appreciate knowing them just so I'm forewarned.
I want to boil it down to its absolute core. Number one, can we require employees to be vaccinated and or regularly tested? And number two, does the law permit us to have a similar requirement for students?
Students who can get a vaccine, age 12 and up.
Yes, for students who are eligible to have the vaccine, and for students for whom there is a vaccine available. I mean, we already do that for things like measles, mumps, rubella, right? But the question is, can we go beyond what New York State mandates?
So this is, So this really is not a parking lot question, this is really something you have for administration.
It's administration / council / reentry task force.
Okay, thank
Right.
you. Does anyone else for polling on the board?
I do have two questions. Just because I'm unaware, do we have further discussion regarding the athletic turf field task force or whatever that was? Is that planned?
It has not been given a firm date yet, but it is on the parking lot to be given a date for work session.
So I would just really look forward to a time when we could discuss that. And I understand that there are other more pressing matters as we approach September 1st, but I do want that to not be forgotten. And then I have one other question. In advance of the proposed September 9th, continuing the equity conversation of the Equity Stakeholders Task Force, I would ask that we have our legal team review the recommendations that were made by the Equity Stakeholders Task Force in advance of having more discussions with the community about them to see if these are actually viable options, because I would hate for the community to have discussions about hiring practices that are not really within the reach of, as an example of something, I would hate for those conversations to happen and then to find out that they were not viable options. So the entire recommendations, which I think number in excess of 40.
No, there's 5.
There's 5
5 categories.
categories, but there's,
Oh, you mean those?
yeah,
Subs.
I mean the individual recommendations are
Yeah.
much more than just 5. And I mean, to the extent that they're going to be discussed, I think that we should have some guidance in terms of how viable some of those recommendations are, in consideration of teachers' contracts and what teachers are allowed to do, and controversial teaching subjects and autonomy that teachers have to teach within their contracts, and also just labor laws.
Now, just one quick question. You said September 9th?
There is a proposed September 9th continuing the equity conversation community forum.
That's the World Cafe.
So you want it before the World Cafe? Gotcha. And then with respect to the athletic turf, just because, I believe you'll be receiving updates on it, on certain aspects of it, through weeklies. But I don't know yet what date we have it. I know the board officers, we did speak with administration, and they are in the process, I think, of doing some of the legwork and groundwork that we need with the feasibility study, etc.
Well, just as like a new board member, how would that all work? Was that like, do you table it as a potential work session, or is that something that happens? Is it something that's already rolling? Has the work session already happened?
Both. So it's the recommendations that require the board, anytime a task force comes back with a recommendation, the recommendations that require the board's involvement come back for discussion for the board. But things that are within the administration purview, they go ahead and start planning on those aspects of it, because we've already given them the direction that this is what we want to do. We want to go in this direction, so start preparing us for it, because otherwise it would take too long. With grandparents before it.
Thank you.
Anything else? Anything else for polling of the board? I feel like you're.
I think that's okay.
Okay. All right. With that stated, then, items needed for the next Board of Education meeting, obviously, will be the committees that was tabled from this meeting, as well as, I think that's it.
Well, I'm assuming when you said the next meeting. We're talking August 11th
September 2nd, I think,
or September 2nd.
the next business meeting.
I'm talking both. I'm thinking of August 11th, if that's the date we do for the meetings, and then for our September meeting as well. I don't have anything for the September meeting.
Not yet.
I don't know.
Okay, so with that stated, recommended action of the Board of Education to join the meeting
So moved.
at 8:07.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion
Sorry,
carried?
who seconded that? Anna? Thank you.
Me,
On a second.
I'm gonna sit next, I'm gonna sit closer to you next time, Tracy.
Oh, no, it's okay. Omar, motion, and Anna second. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you and good night to everyone. I hope everyone continues to enjoy their summer.